Hello and welcome to livealittlehigher.com. This week we read Parashah Va'eira. It's the second parashah of the book of Shemot, of the book of Exodus. And today we're going to talk about the virtue of the Jewish women, that they were stubborn women, and because they didn't give in to Pharaoh's wishes, in their merit the Jewish people were saved. So from last week's Torah portion we read about these two midwives. They're called Shifra and Puach, and the commentators Rashi says that it was actually Yocheved and Miriam, Yocheved being Moshe Rabbeinu's mom, Miriam being his sister. And these two women worked for let's say for Pharaoh in delivering the Jewish babies, and they were given the mandate that every Jewish male boy that was born, they had to throw into the Nile River. They had to get rid of the boys. And because of this, the Jewish men divorced their wives. They didn't want to keep having babies. They didn't want to keep growing their families in such an oppressive place where obviously it was a lot of heartbreak. But Miriam, who was the daughter of Amram and Yocheved, went up to her father and said to the father that he was worse than Pharaoh. Why? Because Pharaoh had given this edict that all the Jewish males, all the Jewish baby boys had to be drowned in the Nile River, but he didn't say anything about the girls. So she said to the father, to Amram, who was actually the son of Levi, and he was the leader of that generation, and he says, "You're actually worse than Pharaoh, because Pharaoh at least will allow the Jewish girls to live, but you are not giving an option even for the Jewish girls to live." And because of this, Amram, the women went back to their husbands, and they flirted with them, and they brought food for them, and they made them fall in love with them again, and they remarried their wives. And because of this, the Jewish family was not destroyed. After this episode, Moshe Rabbeinu, the leader of the Jewish people, was born. And if it wasn't for Miriam, the Jewish people would have never left Egypt. So because of this virtue of the women, of the Jewish women in Egypt, God says that because of the Jewish women, the Jewish nation will be redeemed, just as in the times of Shemot, of the times of the Exodus, of slavery in Egypt. Now in these times, in our times also, the Jewish women are the ones that in our merit God will bring redemption. So we see that the special virtue of the Israelite women in Egypt was their determination to maintain the Jewish people even under the harshest conditions, and they encouraged the husbands to father children under the grimmest circumstances. So imagine, I hear so many people today, friends of mine, that tell me that their children don't want to get married. There's a phenomenon of the time that many kids don't want to get married, and they don't want to have families. And they say no, because life is too expensive, or because their jobs is too hard, because it's hard to keep up a family. And they find all these excuses. And we read about these times where people were oppressed, where people were living under terrible conditions, and nevertheless, the Jewish people never stopped having their babies. Even after the Holocaust, when half of the Jewish nation was destroyed, people kept getting married, that kept having families, and this is the secret to our survival. It is that we never give up. So we see that in those days, the mothers of these times, they kept the faith of the kids, they kept the faith of the family. From here we learn that the role of a woman in their home is to keep the emunah shelema, is to keep the home optimistic, faithful, hopeful, with bitachon, with trust in Hashem. And they encouraged this generation. They encouraged these children. They would tell them stories of how they ended up in Egypt. They told them stories about Abraham, Isaac, and Yaakov, and their forefathers, and how Hashem promised them the land of Israel, and that eventually they're going to come to the land of Israel, and Hashem is going to give them a Torah. And they kept the children looking out for the future. Not only that, they would soothe them to sleep. They would sing lullabies to them, where they sang about how Hashem takes care of them every day. So the women kept the kids in love with their religion, faithful and truthful and hopeful and with faith. And this is what we see, that the Hashem, when we go through hard times, when we're confronted with times that we would think, okay, this is the end of us, there's no way out of this, when we keep with our faith and we keep optimistic and hopeful, Hashem overrides any evil decree. So Judaism does not submit to dictates from the outside. We Jews keep to ourselves. We never try to assimilate. Sadly, many Jews end up assimilating, but the norm of a Jew is that he keeps himself Jewish. We have things that set us apart from the rest of the nations, like dietary laws. We keep the Brit Milah. The boy at 13 does his bar mitzvah. In any way or form, people celebrate Shabbat. There's things in our religion that even the most assimilated Jew, he still has a pink elayid inside of him. He still has something that shows that he's a Jew. And no matter what the outside dictates, what's the fashions and all these things, a Jew has the capacity to give his life instead of going against God. And I'm not saying everybody does it, but a Jew, when he's put to the test, when a Jew, they tell him either you convert to this religion or you die, the Jew prefers to die. We saw it with many of the hostages, that they were told, you have to convert to Islam. If you convert to Islam, we let you free. And all of them said no, nobody converted. Like in the times of the Inquisition, we saw how the Jews were put either to you were gonna be burned, or you convert, and they prefer to be burned. And so we see that the law of the code of Jewish law, the Shulchan Aruch, reads, "He who is engaged in the service of God should not be ashamed in the face of those who mock him. Be bold as a tiger, so that you can show a bold face to those who scorn you." So a Jew, every day in the news I read, it's very sad. I see that Jews are being tormented in the streets, and they're being harassed, and they're being attacked because they're wearing a kippah, because they look Jewish, or whatever the reason is. And nevertheless, they stand proud and they keep going. So in a unique genetic mutation, we see Abraham stamped this quality on all his descendants, and he's called Abraham because he was called the Ivrit. And the Ivrit means, the Hebrew means that he is from the other side of the river. When everybody would do one thing, he would keep himself apart and do what Hashem asked him to do. To the point that he shattered all the idols in his father's store, because God told he believed in only one God. So the same happened with the midwives, that they followed this tradition of Abraham. It was in their genetic code. And Rashi explains that they refused to obey the orders of Pharaoh, that to kill the Jewish babies, because this goes against the Torah. This goes completely against our law. We are not allowed to kill anybody. And so by not obeying Pharaoh, they were both passive by not killing the babies, and active because they had to take care of them. So they would hide them in the forest, and they would feed them, and they would take care of them. So the reward granted to the midwives is stated explicitly in the Torah, and because the midwives fear God, he made houses for them. And the reward was that they became the homemakers of the nation. Who was this? Was the Kehuna, which is the priest, the Kohanim, that came from Yocheved. Aaron HaKohen was one of her sons, and this was the high priest. And from Miriam, who was married to someone from the tribe of Yehuda, from her comes the Davidic dynasty. So they were both the mothers of the priesthood and the kingship of the people of Israel. So in general, the Torah commands us to obey our parents. It is a very big mitzvah to have kibud avaim. That's the name given to it. We have to honor our parents. We have to respect them, and we have to usually do what they ask us to do. And also we're commanded to pay respect to royalty. If a king walks in, we have to do the etiquette according to a king. And the Mishnah instructs us to pray for the welfare of the government. Like I remember in the shuls, in Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, we have a special prayer for the government of the country that is housing us. And the Talmud states that the law of the country is the law. So for example, if the king or the president of a country raises the taxes, we're obliged to pay these taxes. If there is a law that the people can't do certain things, we don't do them. But if it contradicts the laws of the Torah, then the Jew is not, we have to go with the Torah. We have to do what the Torah mandates. And so we see with the parents, it's the same thing. If the parent tells you not to keep Shabbat or to desecrate a law of the Torah, first you have to keep the Shabbat and do what Hashem wants from you, and you can go against your parents. So God commanded us to respect our parents and to hold them in awe. We see that in the 10 commandments, in the first 5 commandments, the 4th commandment is to keep Shabbos. The 5th commandment is to honor parents. So we would say, why is keeping Shabbos is before honoring parents? It's because if the parents tells the son or the daughter not to keep Shabbat, the daughter or the son is obliged to keep Shabbat. It overrides honoring parents, because when you honor God, you're honoring your parents. So our parents represent the authority of God, the third and principal partner in creating a child. And the verse states, "You shall fear your mother and father, and my Shabbat you shall keep." So yes, we have to have reverence towards our parents. We cannot scream at them. If they walk into a room, you have to stand up. You don't sit in their chair. You have to make sure when they're elderly that they're taken care of, that they're not in the streets, But Rashi comments, even though I warn you to fear your father, if he should ask you to violate the Shabbat, do not obey him. And so we see that when a parent commands his child to carry out an act that opposes the laws of the Torah, the child should not obey the parent. And the law that one must not violate a commandment to obey a parent touches on the core of our identity. Honoring our parents stems from our fundamental gratitude towards those who bore us and took pains to raise us. In Judaism, we also respect them as the transmitters of our Jewish tradition. So the parents' obligation is to go from generation to generation, is to teach us our values, our Torah, our morals, our ethics, to continue living a Jewish life. So my essential identity is that God created me in His image. So Hashem created us in His image. What does it mean that God created us in His image? It means that if Hashem is kind, we have to be kind. If Hashem is merciful, we have to be merciful. If Hashem sets boundaries in certain areas, we have to set boundaries in certain areas. So as a Jew, I'm obligated to His commandments, and I cannot surrender my commitment to Him, and neither should you. The parent is really the bridge between God and us. The parent should be that connector of the child to God. So refusing, also the sages describe the dialogue between Hananiah, Michael, and Azariah, and Nebuchadnezzar in the times of the first temple, of the destruction of the first temple. He was a Babylonian king. He told them that they had to bow down to an idol, and they refused. And Nebuchadnezzar says, did the Almighty not command you to obey royalty? Isn't it in the Torah that you have to obey royalty? No matter what they ask you. And they replied, you are king over us regarding taxes and property laws, but regarding idolatry, no. And you and a dog are the same thing. They began respectfully but concluded in a very harsh way with Jewish chutzpah towards this king, and they knew that maybe he would hang them or kill them because they're going against him. But they said, like, between you and God, first is Hashem. If He tells us only one God, we cannot bow to your God. So in the Torah portion of Va'eira, we see another example of how to stand against the decrees of a pharaoh, of a king of another nation. God told Moses, come and speak to Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, that he should send out the children of Israel from his country, and I will harden Pharaoh's heart. So what did God do? God sent him 10 plagues. In this Torah portion, we go through the first 7 plagues, and every time he's let our people go, let our people go. The minute that he says okay, at the end, he always takes a step back. Every time he becomes harder in letting the Jewish people go. And so we see that the Torah emphasizes how hard Pharaoh's hearts became. And God reinforced Pharaoh's will with the power to defy him. Despite the devastating plagues that he sent, Moses too had to confront Pharaoh in a battle of wills that reached a crescendo in the following Torah portion of Bo, after he informed Pharaoh of the imminent plague that would kill all the firstborn of the Egyptians, including his son. And eventually, even Pharaoh admitted that he was subjugated to the King of Kings. And the Talmud describes Moses' final confrontation with Pharaoh. And it says, and he, Moses, left Pharaoh in fuming rage. And yet he said nothing to him, said Resh Lakish. He slapped him and left. Rabbi Yohanan maintained, God said to Moses, he's a wicked man, therefore be insolent towards him. So what it's saying is that when you are in the hands of an oppressor, of a person that defies God, that goes against Hashem, then you have to have chutzpah. You have to be also not elegant towards this king. And in the face of a king, of the threats of a king, he must summon up infinite willpower and defy him against all odds. And we are prepared for self-sacrifice. This is the koach of a Jew. This is our strength, that we're willing to do anything for Hashem. When we're put to the test, a Jew, this is what we are. And so regarding a Jewish king, also, Maimonides rules, if the king decrees to annul a mitzvah, do not heed him. There were times in the Torah that we read in the times of the Tanakh, many Jewish kings that they idol worshipped. They brought us to many problems, the destruction of our temples. But nevertheless, a Jew has to go against that. Even if the president, the prime minister of our nation, if they go against the Torah, the Jewish people have to stand against them. So the Talmud, the sages ask, which takes precedence, the words of the rabbi or the words of the student? And in his ruling, Maimonides altered the wording from student to servant, stating the words of the master take precedence over the words of the servant. Even a king, with all the respect due to him, is God's servant. So at the end of the day, a ruler, a king, a president of a nation, they are in the hands of Hashem. They are working for him. They cannot forget who they're working for. And so a Jew who is loyal to God, his people, his land, and his Torah, will continue the tradition of the Jewish existence. And the Jewish soul can never completely become detached from its divine source. No matter how far away we get from Hashem, how assimilated, how not religious we become, the essence of a Jew is always connected to the essence of God. And in essence, every Jew remains faithful to the Almighty. Obedience to Him corresponds to the innate faith that is the core of the Jewish soul, and He is the King of Kings and the crown of all crowns. When we stand up against adversity by means of pure faith, we have the invisible power to defy evil decrees. When we do what Hashem desires from us, then the decrees just get annulled. And this is the power of the genuine Jewish resistance that can overcome even a government that offers a substitute for faith in God and His Torah, and ultimately the divine soul of the Jewish leaders will influence them to realize their own faith and succumb to the pleasure of serving God through a righteous king with righteous decrees. So we have to stand strong, and we have to be the people that God created to be. We cannot have false gods, be scoffers and trying flatterers, trying to get favors from people in high positions, because at the end of the day, Hashem rules the world. We have to go with what is right, with what is correct in the eyes of Hashem, and in this merit, we will be able to be saved from any oppressor, from any bad decree. The Jewish people will live and will continue to go from strength to strength. So I want to wish you a blessed week and live a little higher. Thank you.